right. Good morning, Reformation Church. We have this week and next week to finish up the book of Judges, and then we will be in the book of 1 Peter. So, let us turn to Judges chapter number 20. What we saw last week was an odd story of a man and his concubine who, to make a long story short, traveled into a land of Israel who had become worse than Sodom itself, and took this poor woman and brutally abused her, and then this man took that dead corpse of a woman and cut her into pieces and sent her to the 12 tribes of Israel to make a statement. What we see next is Israel itself, the people of God, those that are rescued out of Egypt into the promised land, in civil war with itself. They're fighting against themselves. They're no longer fighting against the Assyrians or the Amalekites or any of the other people around. Those people that the judges, in the book of Judges, would rise up and conquer those foreign people. But judges were completely incapable of governing inside of Israel those threats. And those internal threats are often far worse than the external threats. As we look at this passage of civil war, our country is one that has had actual civil war in the past. And as we look at how things are becoming more and more divisive and divided, more and more segregated and separated from each other, where now those who have different opinions and different points of view, they don't talk to each other. Instead, they go to their silos on the internet to get news from whatever sources confirms their own biases and prejudices. We are becoming more and more divided than ever as a country and as a nation. We look at that division that leads to actual physical war in the past. And the question is, how do we as Christians, how do we navigate that? Because unlike in this story where there actually is a clear good guy and bad guy, we look at our nation and, man, there's a lot of gray. Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? Who's kind of not so much the bad guy as much as that bad guy? It gets very confusing. What I want to propose to you today is that in the midst of a culture that is deeply divided, what we need is a third way. Too much of our society has been put along party lines, and unfortunately politics has seemed to engross and devour every other human thought. And we think, well, it's only a choice in everything, no matter what our opinions are, even what cars we own or don't choose to own, whether I'm a Democrat or Republican. I want to propose to you a third way in navigating this divisive culture. The third way is a Christian. That we are those of a different country. We are those of a different kingdom. And while we may look and use different political machinations, just as Paul did, to bring about righteousness, hopefully in a country or a nation, our allegiance does not lie with any of them, but with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So how do we navigate this? How do we stand against evil? Because in the end, that's what we're talking about. That this nation and this world is corrupted to its core. It's because of that fall of Adam, ever since, corruption has infiltrated and infected every contour of human society. When we look at Jesus and the cross of Jesus, he came, yes, for our individual salvation. But he also came to eradicate evil and set up a kingdom of righteousness. So how do we act as agents of that righteous kingdom in this divided land? Well, this is a long chapter, so we're going to go section by section and make comments along the way. First point, to stand against the darkness, there needs to be a unified purpose. Wow, that is really small. So if you can see that, there you go. Starting in verse number 1, then all the people of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba, including the land of Gilead, and the congregation assembled as one man to the Lord at Mizpah. And the chiefs of all the people of all the tribes of Israel presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 men on foot that drew the sword. Now the people of Benjamin heard that the people of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. And the people of Israel said, "Tell us, how did this evil happen?" And the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, that was from the last chapter, answered and said, "I came to Gibeah, that belongs to Benjamin, I and my concubine, to spend the night. And the leaders of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house against me by night. They meant to kill me, and they violated my concubine, and she is dead. So I took hold of my concubine and cut her in pieces and sent her throughout all the country of the inheritance of Israel, for they have committed abomination and outrage in Israel. Behold, the people of Israel, all of you, give your advice and counsel here." So there were the 12 tribes of Israel. Benjamin became real bad guys. Benjamin descended to the level, as we saw last week, or actually the week before that, because it was Father's Day, but that we saw in the last chapter, of Sodom itself, is how far they sank. But the people of Israel, the rest of the 11 tribes of Israel, gathered together, it says, as one man. They were unified in this. This Levite's action of cutting up the concubine, which was shocking to our ears, was shocking then too. It's not like that's never a shocking thing. And the point was to rouse them up to say this is wrong and justice needs to take place. Because remember, there was no king in Israel. There was no external person that you could appeal to. There was no David the king saying, "Hey, David, these people, do something about it." There was no court system, no justice system. And so instead, he relied on brute force of the rest of the tribes. They had one purpose. Now, we, as God's people, in the midst of so much corruption and confusion, we must always remember our purpose. We must always remember why we unify. Why do we gather each and every week in this place together? We're very different people. We have different hobbies, different senses of humor, different personalities, different ethnicities, different ideas of how things should or shouldn't be done, different opinions. Even this morning in Sunday school when we were talking, we had different opinions. Why do we gather at all? Because of the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is our purpose. This is our overriding motivation, our overriding power. It should be in our DNA and in our bones and in our bloodstream that everything we do is about the gospel. This is why we unify as one man, as one person. If we unify on any other thing, we have missed the mark. This is why we gathered together. And this is our chief weapon against this decaying culture. They don't need to just have more legislation. They need regeneration. They need to be saved. They need to be transformed from the inside outward, and then that will absolutely change a society and a culture. We need to be gospel people through and on the gospel of Jesus Christ, which, what is the gospel? Because that can be very confusing to people. The gospel is very simple. You see, we are sinners, and Jesus Christ, He came and lived without sin as the perfect human being, never doing anything wrong. He was led to the cross where He suffered and died a real death. He was put into the grave, and 3 days later He rose again from the dead and conquered all of the schemes and power of the enemy, conquered death itself, and rose to the right hand of the Father. And so that we who believe and trust in Him as our Lord and Savior can be saved and transformed. This is our gospel, and we must never lose it. If we lose that, we've lost it all. And so, well, there may be things in our life, because unity doesn't mean uniformity. It doesn't mean we're going to be the same, doesn't mean we're going to have the same ideas or the same personalities. That'd be a pretty boring place. The point is that our unity is in the gospel, and that supersedes every other thing. So, what's interesting is that, remember in the last chapter, God wasn't mentioned once. In this, God is very active. So, let us continue reading. Next point is that to stand against the darkness, there needs to be unified determination. So we need a purpose. We know why we're doing what we're doing, and we need to be determined about that purpose. It's easy to get riled up for a cause and then kind of peter out in the end. You know, we get tired and life gets in the way. We need a determination. Christians need a certain kind of grit in this culture to keep on going. So, verse number 8. And all the people arose as one man, again, saying, none of us will go to his tent, and none of us will return to his house. But now this is what we will do in Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot, and we will take 10 men of 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, and 100 of 1,000, and 1,000 of 10,000, to bring provisions for the people, that when they come they may repay Gibeah of Benjamin for all the outrage that they have committed in Israel. So all the men of Israel gathered against the city, united as one man. And the tribes of Israel sent men throughout all the tribes of Benjamin, saying, what evil is this that has been taken place among you? Now therefore, give up the men, the worthless fellows in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and purge evil from Israel. But the Benjaminites would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the people of Israel. They were determined as one man not to go back home. They're not going to sleep. They're not going to go to their tents. They're not going to go to their house. They will not stop until this issue is rectified. They had this steadfastness, this perseverance of the saints that we must have as well. They were determined also to make sure that justice was done. This was a hard thing to go against another tribe of Israel. It was unheard of, unknown of, that this was allotted by God, that this should be their place. What if they were eradicated? What if we went to war and decimated Benjamin? Who gets this land now? How does this pass on that was supposed to be continual forever? So they give a measured response. It makes sense. Verse 13. Therefore, give up the men, the worthless fellows. They come to Gibeah, they come to Benjamin and say, look, we don't want to kill all y'all. Okay? We just want the men that did this. That's reasonable. Those men that went and did this horrible atrocity all night and murdered this poor woman, we want them and we'll put them to justice. The rest of you can go about your way. What shocks me and is surprising to me is Benjamin refuses. They decide, no, we're going to protect those who are evil. We're going to side with those that are wicked. They decided to double down and protect the vile men of their own city, saying they don't deserve what you're going to have done to them. Benjamin lacked determination. They lacked the follow-through of something that may have been hard. We wonder, why in the world would they side with such evil, rank wickedness? Well, maybe it's because they were just as wicked, or because this was people they knew. They didn't want to follow through with what justice actually meant. Here's a key point that I want you to take from this. Protecting evil is itself evil. It is wrong and wicked to protect those that ought to be brought to justice and righteousness under whatever kind of guise you may have. And I started to think, why would you protect such rank evil? Why would you side with those that are sinful against those who are righteous? Here's a few possibilities. One, due to fear the ramifications of it. I know that the justice that is going to be met out is harsh. And I don't want that person. I know they made mistakes. I know they did something wrong, but I don't want to carry it all the way through because they might have something bad happen to them. And we don't have the determination and the mettle of our own selves to say, this is what justice requires. Another thing is, it may be a distaste for the proceedings, a distaste for how this thing is going to play out. You mean you're going to come in here and take these men and put them on some kind of public execution? Well, I don't like that in my sensibilities. I'm a nice person. I'm a nice guy. And so instead, we're going to protect the evil from that happening. Another option is because of undue loyalty. They're of my tribe. They're my peeps. They're my people. So while we might deal with them or something, you don't get to come in here and enact some kind of justice against them. If it's between them and you, well, you go away and we're protecting them. Could be a personal offense because they're close to you. So, hey, I know them. And if you say that they're wrong, you're saying that I'm wrong. They're in my tribe. They're in my camp. And so I'm going to get offended that you even accused any of them because now you're accusing me. Or another possibility is just mere contempt for the law. I want to do whatever I want to do, and if you enforce it on them, you're going to enforce something on me, and so I want nothing to do with any of these proceedings. Instead, let's protect the wicked. We, Christians, need to remember that even if it's someone in our own camp, or literally in the Bible, their own tribe, we need to not defend them just because they're one of our own, if they're in evil. And that requires in our own families, in our own church, in our own relationships. By all means, if you can't go, unfortunately, too long without hearing some pastoral scandal of some pastor that gets into some kind of affair or wickedness. That should not be protected. That should not be covered up. That should not be whitewashed away. Even last night, I was sitting and I was watching a documentary that perfectly illustrates this protection of evil because it's in our own tribe. And it's in the story of the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts, it has come out, has had not 8,200, but over 82,000 cases of known sexual abuse of children. This is a number larger than the Catholic Church. And not just that. It's not just, it happened. Horrible things happen. It's not just that it happened. They knew about it. They have rooms and rooms full of files of these known people that have committed these atrocities, and they hid them away and did nothing about it. Why? Because this organization is a good organization. It provides good things to the community. And this looks bad. And so rather than dealing with wickedness, rather than dealing with unrighteousness and evil, we're going to cover it up in order to protect our tribe, in order to protect the organization, because the organization has to go on even if it harbors wickedness in its very bones. If we're going to stand against a very divided culture, we ourselves need to hold ourselves to the standards of God's Word, even if it's the hard things in our own tribe. Next point, to stand against the darkness, there needs to be unified skill. So, verse 14, then the people of Benjamin came together out of the cities to Gibeah to go out to battle against the people of Israel. And the people of Benjamin mustered out of their cities on that day 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who mustered 700 chosen men. Among all those were 700 chosen men who were left-handed. Every one could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. And the men of Israel, apart from Benjamin, mustered 400,000 men who drew the sword. All of these were men of war. The people of Israel arose and went up to Bethel and inquired of God, who shall go up first for us to fight against the people of Benjamin? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up first. And the people of Israel rose in the morning and encamped at Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to fight against Benjamin. And the men of Israel drew up the battle line against them at Gibeah. The people of Benjamin came out of Gibeah and destroyed on that day 22,000 men of the Israelites. But the people, the men of Israel, took courage and again formed the battle line in the same place where they had formed it on the first day. So they gathered together, choose their men of war. They're men that are skilled. They know the weapons of war. They know how to use these things. They're not just haphazardly picking up weapons. They've trained. And on this first day of battle, they ask God, who shall go first? And Judah goes first. Now he warns them of these left-handed men, these men that can sling a stone at a hair and not miss. Now slings, it's not just like, you think of like Dennis the Menace in a slingshot. It's not what it is. It's literally you put a stone into a piece of cloth, usually like leather or something like that, swing it around, and you're able to somehow, I don't even know how you do that, hit a target by flinging it in the air. Now, these stones weighing up to 1 pound can be projected with uncanny accuracy at speeds of 90 miles per hour, or 132 feet per second. Now, while that might not seem fast in comparison to modern bullets, if you took the stone's sizes and their equivalents to modern gun calibers, it would be a 100-millimeter projectile. For comparison, the modern 50 caliber rifle round is about 13 millimeters. So it's slow, yes, but it's a huge mass slamming into your body at 90 miles an hour. It's deadly. It means that they need skill to go against them. They took courage, and even though they lost the battle that day, it says they again formed the battle line in the same place where they formed it the first day. They came right back to the fray to do it again. Their skill was unified, and we need a unified skill. What do I mean by that? Well, we have a sword. We have the Word of God. We have the Bible. And each of us need to be skilled warriors in the Word of God. None of us can go back and say, well, I'll leave that to other people to do that. I'll leave that to pastors or Sunday school teachers. We all need to be in the Word and know the Word. We need to be skilled in the weapons of our warfare. We need to be skilled in prayer. We need to be skilled in our own spiritual walk, making sure that we're standing side by side with our other brothers and sisters who are also in this battle and in this war. We don't get the luxury of slacking off. We must be unified in purpose and in determination and in our skill. The next point here is that we need to stand against the darkness, there needs to be unified prayer. We need to be unified together in praying. Verse 23, and the people of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until the evening. And they inquired of the Lord. They're praying to him. Shall we again draw near to fight against our brothers? See how their heart is? They don't want to do this. The people of Benjamin, and the Lord said, go up against them. So the people of Israel came near against the people of Benjamin the second day. And Benjamin went against them out of Gibeah the second day and destroyed 18,000 men of the people of Israel, all of these men who drew the sword. Then all the people of Israel, the whole army, went up and came to Bethel and wept. They sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And the people of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days, and Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, ministered before it in those days, saying, shall we go out once more to battle against our brothers and the people of Benjamin, or shall we cease? And the Lord said, go up, for tomorrow I will give them into your hand. So the next day they pray to the Lord. He tells them to go fight. They lose again on the second day. And then what do? Well, they go and they pray again. They keep praying. Oftentimes, one of the problems is we pray that something will happen. It doesn't go our way, and then we stop praying. No, persistence in prayer. You keep praying. You pray through the failure. You pray through the stumbling. You pray through the bad thing that's occurring. You pray through the stuff that doesn't go away. You keep on praying. And we, as a believing people, need to be people of prayer. You know, I try not to single people out when I don't talk to them first, but Brother Nate has been focused lately on prayer, and I think that is fantastic. I think that is good. We need to find ways that we can pray together, that we can band together to pray separately and to pray in the physical presence of one another. There is power in that. Nothing that we will ever do for Christ will ever come without prayer. It is essential and vital. Every single move of the Spirit that you see either in the Bible or in all of Christian history has always been accompanied by prayer and never without it. There won't be revival, there won't be change without prayer occurring. So, once again, they could not defeat Israel, or they did defeat Israel, and so our next point, to stand against the darkness, there needs to be a unified strategy. Oftentimes we say, okay, we're going to go fight this war of this culture and this society and this evil world, and we all run around doing our own things. Instead of having a plan of action, of having an idea of what we're going to do. You know, I see it all the time in the hospital where you'll have a physician come in and say, okay, this is your plan of care, this is what you need to do. And then you'll get a specialist, you'll get an endocrinologist, you'll get the liver guys, you'll get the surgeon. Every single one of them telling you to do something different. No, I think you should do this procedure. No, don't, that procedure won't work, do this one. There's no unified plan of care because they don't get together and talk to each other. It's very frustrating. Why don't you all get on the same page and then tell this patient what they need to do? Well, we too, as Christians, can often just be going about our day in random ways rather than a unified strategy of how to tackle this culture. And this church is primed and poised to band together with a common strategy against this dark and dying world, because we have something that they desperately need and cannot get anywhere: the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, verse 29, so Israel sent men in ambush around Gibeah, and the people of Israel went up against the people of Benjamin on the third day. Anytime you see third day in the Bible, spidey sense should go off, okay? And set themselves in array against Gibeah as at other times. And the people of Benjamin went out against the people, and they were drawn away from the city. And at other times they began to strike and kill some of the people in the highways, one of which goes up to Bethel and the other to Gibeah, and in the open country, about 30 men of Israel. And the people of Benjamin said, "They are routed before us, as at the first." But the people of Israel said, "Let us flee and draw them away from the city into the highways." And all the men of Israel rose up out of their place and set themselves in array at Baal-Tamar. And the men of Israel who were in ambush rushed out of their places at Merageba. And there came against Gibeah 10,000 chosen men out of all Israel, and the battle was hard. But the Benjaminites did not know that disaster was close upon them. And the Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel, and the people of Israel destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin that day. All these were men who drew the sword. So the people of Benjamin saw that they were defeated, and the men of Israel gave ground to Benjamin because they trusted the men in ambush who they had set against Gibeah. And the men in ambush hurried and rushed against Gibeah. The men in ambush moved and struck all the city with the edge of the sword. So what happens is they line up again. The same way they did the previous 2 days, they're going to attack. But this time, Israel has a plan. So they line up by the city gates. There's archers. There's a fortified city. They start to decimate them, and the people of Israel run away. Benjamin says, "Oh, they're running. Let's go destroy them." They open up the gates and chase after them. They keep on running until they lead them right where they want them to be, in the middle of an ambush. And the people of Israel gather around them, ambush, start slaughtering the Benjaminites, and then they look back at their city whose gates they left wide open, and another contingent of Israelites were storming the city, razing it to the ground, destroying those inside that were fighting, completely sacking and pillaging the city of Gibeah that had all these atrocities. They had a plan. They had a strategy. They were smart about it. Jesus himself says that we should be as harmless as doves, but as wise as serpents. Now he says wise, but even the word there, cunning and shrewd like serpents are. We need to be smart about what we do, just as they were tricking these Benjaminites into their own destruction. Now, it says, verse 38, "Now the appointed signal between the men of Israel and the men in the ambush was that they made a great cloud of smoke rise up out of the city. The men of Israel should turn in battle. Now Benjamin had begun to strike and kill about 30 men of Israel. They said, 'Surely they are defeated before us as in the first battle.' But when the signal began to rise out of the city in a column of smoke, the Benjaminites looked behind them, and behold, the whole city went up in smoke to heaven." I just noticed that interesting language there. That smoke to heaven is often referred to in the Old Testament as the sacrifices of God that are savory in his nostrils. Benjamin, this day, because of their evil, had to be a sacrifice to God, and the smoke went up to heaven. Then the men of Israel turned, and the men of Benjamin were dismayed, for they saw that disaster was close upon them. Therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel in the direction of the wilderness, but the battle overtook them. Those who came out of the cities were destroyed them in their midst, surrounding the Benjaminites. They pursued them and trod them down from Nohah as far as the opposite Gibeah on the east. 18,000 men of Benjamin fell, all of them men of valor. And they turned and fled towards the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. 5,000 men of them were cut down in the highways, and they pursued hard to Gibeah. About 2,000 men of them were struck down. So all who fell that day in Benjamin were 25,000 men who drew the sword, and all of them men of valor. But 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and remained at the rock of Rimmon 4 months. And the men of Israel turned back against the people of Benjamin, and struck them with the edge of the sword, the city, the men, the beasts, and all that they found, and all the towns that they found, they set on fire. What Benjamin thought was their victory was actually their defeat. They thought they had won, but actually they had been destroyed. It's interesting to hearken back of why this happened on the third day. There's another story of someone who thought that they had defeated righteousness. Satan, in those last days of Jesus' life, thought that he had come and he had ended the one who was the Messiah. He thought, finally, this one that's going to be King of Kings, this one that's going to rule over Israel, what if I shamefully crucify him on a cross? And so it even says that with the Pharisees that he riled up their passions and hatred against them, crying out that Jesus should be crucified. He should be slaughtered. He should hang there and suffer. He should be put to shame. And there at that moment, Satan, not knowing the future, thought, finally, the Son of God is dead. But unbeknownst to him, what he thought was victory was his ultimate defeat. Because on the third day, Jesus Christ rose again from the dead. In fact, in Matthew chapter number 23, Jesus even says what his mission was, which was to go into the strong man's house, bind the strong man, and pillage everything that he owned. That is exactly what he did on the cross of Jesus Christ, where he pillaged the house of Satan. He rules now and defeated death, hell, and the grave. He is truly the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, far surpassing what even Satan himself even knew or realized. What he thought was victory was actually his defeat. And you know, that's how Jesus often works. He takes what we think is utter despair, utter disaster and defeat, and he transforms it into victory. Jesus did come to save individuals, yes, but he didn't just come only for individual salvation. He came to defeat all the powers of darkness on this whole planet. Okay, so what do? 2 applications and we're done. 1, we need to be unified. We need to be together in this thing. We're going to have differences of opinion. We're going to have different ideas of what to do, and that's fine. But you know, what's interesting about the Bible is it never says for us to get unity or create unity. It never says that. Ephesians 4, 1-3, I therefore, a prisoner of the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of your calling, which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. It's not that we need to create unity. We already have it. We have it in the gospel. We have it in the Spirit. We have it because we're all believers in Jesus Christ. No, what we need to do is maintain that unity. We don't have to manufacture it. We just have to realize it already exists and then maintain it so that nothing tears it down. We need to be a unified people in purpose, determination, skill, prayer, and in our strategy. We need to look for ways to join what others are doing, to uplift them rather than tear down. Rather than divide, find ways we can unite with one another with our skills and passions. 2, don't side with evil. Have the courage to stand against it, regardless of even if it's someone in our own tribe or not. Let us stand with those whose cause is righteous and good and true. Even if the ramifications of that may make us uncomfortable, God's side is always the right side. And protecting evil is always the wrong side. As we close and think about the Lord's Supper, what's amazing about Jesus on the cross is that we, in fact, were evil. We were his enemies. With every right, he could have come with rays of heaven and destroyed us, but instead he says, those are my people that I want to save. I want them to be mine. He's not destroying his enemies, he's saving them. He's saving us. And on that Lord's Supper that we remember his body and bread broken, we see what he had to do. He had to take on evil in himself so that we could become the righteousness of God. So, Reformation Church, let us walk in that righteousness won by Jesus Christ. At this time, Pastor Skip is going to come and lead us in a time of reflection.